Have you ever walked away from an argument, feeling like you said everything, but nothing actually landed? Like the more you explained, the less they understood? You're not alone. In our culture, we've been conditioned to believe that if we don't speak up, we're weak. That silence means surrender. But what if that idea is completely backward? The ancient Stoics saw things differently. To them, silence wasn't absence, it was presence. Not weakness, but power. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca. They all understood one vital truth. He who controls his tongue often controls the room. Think about it. When someone stays calm while others raise their voices, who really seems in control? Who holds the power? Silence isn't about avoiding conflict. It's about rising above it. It's a choice, not a retreat. A sign of restraint, clarity, and self-mastery. And in a world that rewards noise, the one who speaks less but thinks more becomes rare and powerful. So the next time you feel pressured to explain yourself endlessly, pause, breathe, and ask yourself, is it strength to respond or wisdom to remain still? We often confuse noise with strength. A loud voice, a quick comeback, a raised tone, they look powerful. But here's the truth most people miss. Real strength is quiet. Silence isn't passive. It's not weakness. It's a form of discipline, a kind of inner armor. It takes far more self-control to hold your tongue than to lash out. And that's exactly why the Stoics valued silence not as surrender, but as mastery. When the world gets chaotic, when tempers flare, when someone tries to provoke you, pay attention. The calmest person in the room, that's usually the most powerful one. Why? Because they aren't reacting from ego. They aren't pulled by every emotion, every insult, or every opinion. They've trained their minds to pause, to choose their response instead of being owned by the moment. Think about this. Have you ever regretted staying silent? Probably not. But how many times have you regretted speaking too soon, too harshly, or too emotionally? Silence isn't the absence of a voice, it's the presence of wisdom. And in that silence is strength. Silence isn't just powerful, it's disarming. Have you ever noticed how some people get uncomfortable when you don't respond right away? Especially those who manipulate, pressure, or control? That's because silence removes their favorite tool, your emotional reaction. Manipulators thrive on chaos. They want you to defend, to justify, to stumble over your own words. Why? Because the more you talk, the more control they gain. But when you stay quiet, when you pause, it forces them to fill the space. And in that space, their insecurities start to show. Think about it. People often over-explain when they're uncertain. They talk in circles, hoping words will hide the truth. But silence? Silence is a mirror. It reflects their intentions back at them. The longer you stay silent, the more they reveal their fears, their contradictions, their hidden motives. And you? You remain centered, composed, unshaken. The Stoics knew that sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is nothing at all. Because in silence, you hear everything that matters. Have you ever met someone who talks just a bit too much? Not in a joyful, curious way, but in a way that feels like they're building a wall of words? That's no accident. For manipulators, noise is armor. They hide behind endless explanations, dramatic stories, and quick reassurances not to connect, but to protect something fragile inside. Here's the truth. The more someone speaks without saying anything real, the more likely they're shielding a truth they don't want you to see. It's not strength, it's fear, dressed up as confidence. Now, here's where Stoic wisdom becomes your secret weapon. When you don't react, when you don't rush to fill the silence or defend yourself, you take back control. You deny them the emotional data they're fishing for. No facial cues, no tone shifts, no visible insecurities for them to exploit. Remember, manipulators don't just want to be heard, they want to shape your response. And every time you speak without clarity, they learn how to influence you better. But when you hold your ground in silence, when you choose your words with care, you become unshakable. And that, in a noisy world full of hidden agendas, is real power. Sometimes the most disarming thing you can do is nothing. We're conditioned to respond, to defend ourselves, explain ourselves, to fire back when someone throws shade or challenges our truth. But when you don't take the bait, when you choose silence, something powerful happens. You disrupt the game. Manipulators rely on a predictable script. They expect defensiveness, tears, maybe even rage. That's how they maneuver through the emotions they trigger in others. But when you stay grounded, calm, and utterly still, it throws them off. It's like pulling the rug out from under a magician mid-performance. No reaction, no control. This isn't passive behavior, it's deliberate, it's strategic. When you stop reacting, you force the other person to sit with themselves, with their words, their motives, their discomfort. And most people, especially those used to control, can't stand that. Stoic wisdom reminds us, power isn't about shouting louder. It's about being so rooted in yourself that chaos bends around you instead of through you. In the silence, you become unpredictable. And in that unpredictability, manipulation breaks. So the next time someone tries to provoke a reaction, give them nothing and watch everything shift. Have you ever noticed how the calmest person in the room often sees the most? That's not a coincidence, that's stillness in action. In a world addicted to noise and constant reaction, silence is more than the absence of sound. It's a sharpened tool, a way to listen deeper, observe better, and respond wiser. When you're grounded in stillness, you're no longer distracted by what someone says. You start noticing how they say it, the slight tension in their shoulders, the flicker of hesitation in their voice, the unspoken motives behind polished words. This is emotional centering. The Stoics practiced it relentlessly, not just to remain unshaken by life, but to understand it more clearly. As Epictetus taught, we have 2 ears and 1 mouth, so that we can listen twice as much as we speak. And when we do speak, it should carry weight, not just sound. Because every word is a reflection of your internal state. Every sentence you release tells the world who you are, what you value, and what you fear. End. Because every word, that's why wise people choose their words like a sculptor chiseling stone with care, with patience, and only when necessary. Stillness is not the absence of action, it's the mastery of when to act. Silence is more than the absence of sound, it's a mirror. When you remain quiet in conversation, especially during moments of tension, something interesting happens. The other person begins to fill the space. They talk more, explain more, justify more. And in doing so, they often reveal more than they intend: their uncertainty, their insecurities, their contradictions. That's the mirror effect of silence. See, when you don't react, you force people to sit with themselves, and not everyone is comfortable with that. Most people speak to be understood, but manipulators speak to control perception. When you stay still, they start to unravel. Socrates mastered this. He asked questions not to win arguments, but to invite reflection. Plato too believed that silence wasn't weakness, it was wisdom, waiting for the right moment. You don't have to shout to be heard. You don't even have to explain yourself every time. Sometimes, the most powerful move is to say nothing at all and let the truth echo on its own. So the next time you feel pressured to fill the silence, ask yourself, is it clarity you seek or comfort? There's a kind of power that doesn't shout, doesn't chase validation, and doesn't try to dominate the room, it simply is. That's presence. You've probably felt it before. Someone walks in, says very little, but the energy shifts. They're grounded, centered, clear. They're not performing, they're simply present. And that presence, it disrupts every act around it. See, when someone is trying to provoke you, they're banking on a performance yours. a reaction, an emotional flare-up. But when you remain calm, when you don't feed the script they've written for you, their act begins to collapse. The Stoics knew this. Marcus Aurelius didn't fight for attention, he led through stillness. Epictetus didn't argue to win, he stayed rooted in truth. The truth is, you don't win arguments by being louder. You win by not needing to perform at all, by letting others expose their own contradictions while you remain grounded in clarity. So the next time someone tries to pull you into their chaos, remember this: presence isn't passive, it's power without the noise. Not all silence is strength. Sometimes, silence is a prison built from fear, shame, or the belief that your voice doesn't matter. But other times, silence is a fortress constructed from clarity, respect, and wisdom. The Stoics weren't silent because they had nothing to say. They were silent because they had already said enough to themselves. Silence, when rooted in self-respect, becomes a powerful choice. But silence born from fear? That's self-abandonment in disguise. Here's the difference. When you choose not to speak because your words would serve no purpose, that's strength. But when you stay quiet because you're afraid of how you'll be judged or rejected, that's not silence. That's surrender. Ask yourself, is my silence intentional, or is it avoidance? True Stoic silence is never passive. It's an active choice, a strategy, a reflection of inner control, not outer defeat. Because the moment you understand why you are silent is the moment you take your voice back, even without a word. So here's the truth, the final lesson the Stoics have been trying to teach us all along. You don't have to react just because someone expects you to. In a world where everyone's shouting to prove their point, the one who remains calm becomes the loudest presence in the room. True strength isn't found in raising your voice. It's in mastering the ability to pause, to breathe, and to choose not from impulse, but from intention. You see, manipulators thrive on reaction. That's their oxygen. The moment you respond emotionally, you give them something to grab, twist, and control. But when you stay grounded, still, clear, unreadable, you cut off their power at the root. That kind of silence isn't weakness. It's wisdom in its purest form. It doesn't mean you're hiding. It means you're centered. It means you've stopped living according to the chaos around you and started living according to the clarity within you. And maybe that's the most powerful thing of all. To walk through the world without the need to prove anything. To let your presence speak for itself. So the next time someone tries to provoke you, don't raise your voice. Raise your standard. Be still. Be unmoved. And let the world adjust to your quiet strength.